to do our first full logo design, spending time on focusing on the full process. This section will follow the development of a logo for a new local coffee spot called the Coffee Guild. We walk through all the details of the logo design process, including the brainstorming and concept development stage, and finally getting this logo in a final scalable and flexible vector asset. The first stage in the logo development process is reading or getting the right information from the client or client brief. Some clients supply with a client brief, which will detail and outline their target audience, mission statement, and overall desired look and feeling of the brand based on research or data. Not all clients supply a nicely put together client brief. Some clients are smaller and will be coming to you for guidance for what is first in the process. I put together an awesome downloadable resource for you guys called the Logo Design Client Questionnaire. Feel free to send this document to clients after you customize it with your company name and logo to be able to capture the right questions and answer you will need to start that brainstorming process. And also feel free to modify questions as you wish. Some of these questions are vital to ask a client who does not seem to know where to get started with sharing their thoughts and ideas about his company or logo. These types of questions are direct and intended to give you a basic starting point for the design process. Without knowing what we need to know about the company, creating a logo will lose a sense of authenticity, and the design will be based on just looks and not foundational ideas and company goals. Let's review some of these questions. So what's your company mission statement? So as you know, a mission statement is kind of that 1 or 2 line description of a company that describes what they do. It usually gives you a hint at what industry they're in and what target market they're trying to target. And the second question would be a little bit more follow-up on that target audience. If they're a brand new company, they're coming to you for a logo for the very first time, you want them to also figure out who do they want to target, who do they think their product service is for. And this is huge when it comes to the logo design process, because it can set the tone and style for the particular brand because of the target audience. So if you have millennials, it might be a little bit more fun and bright and vibrant. If it's targeting retirees, it might be more simple and subtle and professional. So the next question, who would you consider your main competitor? And this is huge if they have a really big competitor. It's great to kind of study the competitor's logo. Is it working for them? Why? Why not? So it's really nice to be able to kind of look at that and know who they're competing against and maybe how they can design a logo that'll look different from them enough where it kind of makes them a little more unique. This question naturally leads to the next question, which is what is your unique selling point, a USP? So a unique selling point is something that you offer that your competitor does not offer, or you might not even have a competitor because you have a brand new product or service. This is something we definitely need to know because we can echo that throughout the logo design in some form or fashion. Are there any particular colors or combination of colors that they want to avoid? So this question helps you discover, hey, we don't want to use olive green, we don't want to use our competitors' colors. This will help you when it comes to that last stage when we start to develop the color palette for the logo. It'll help us kind of fine tune and get right to the colors we need to pick. If we already know some we need to avoid, it just helps us reduce the timeline of that. The next question prompts them to talk about if there's any logo types or styles they want to avoid. So they may have something in mind, and this is going to be up to them. Some clients really go in a lot of detail about what they don't like, and some they don't answer the question, but it's worth trying to get that information out of them. Are there examples you can provide or logos or logo marks you think might match the expectations or be a good fit or style-wise for your company? This is probably the most beneficial question, and I hope they answer it well for you. I would not really require, but strongly recommend that they send you at least 2 or 3 examples of logo styles they like, because that's going to really help you feel like you're not picking out of thin air the style to give them, that they're giving you a little bit of a head start there. The next one's a little bit more formal. I just really need to know that full company name so we know if we need to put Inc. or .com or any other kind of little thing that you may miss if you're just doing it off of the company name that you know of. There could be these little details that they need to provide. Also, if there's going to be a byline that they want to work into the logo, and any other information. Also, if they have a registered trademark or a TM symbol, that's incredibly critical to know if you need to work that in somewhere in the logo mark. The last question is open-ended, and it's asking them what their expectations are for the logo design process and the outcome, and what their goals are by working through the process together. This will definitely be open-ended. Hopefully you'll have the client fill out this question. Not always, but it's also very helpful to know their expectations, so when you go through this process, those expectations are easily met or set ahead of time. So also the next one is kind of setting a date, letting them know how long this brainstorming process usually takes. After you do a couple logo design processes, you'll be able to find out what your time frame is. I usually like to do about a 2-week time frame, not so short that they don't think I'm working hard, but not so long that they're just sitting there waiting for this to be done. So just kind of work that out. If they need it sooner than that, this is something you work out with the client, but you could set that expectation here right at the end of this document, letting them know what is the next step of the process, and that's going to be sending their first round of concepts, which we're going to be doing here in the next couple lessons. We're going to be working and brainstorming through those first concepts to send. So a little client brief about the one that we're going to be doing in this class. It's going to be called the Coffee Guild, and that's all they need to work into their logo, but they would love to work in an established date, which is 2016 if they can. They've sent several samples of logos they like. They all seem to be the seal, emblem, or badge style logos. They tend to really kind of gravitate toward that with their style. They kind of go for the hipster, millennial kind of age group and style, and so they're kind of trying to hit that market. They want to be a place where people can come and get work done. They can freelance. They can stay there for lunch. They can get, donuts and coffee and kind of really use it as a working space. The client mentioned they want to stay away from the bright neon colors. They want something that best represents a very chill vibe, very calm, very relaxed, because they want to kind of have people come and stay. They definitely are big on cold brew coffee. They have single origin coffee, so they just don't sell just generic coffee. They really spend a lot of time picking out their coffee beans, and so we want that to be reflected in the logo as well, that they have a lot of care for the coffee. So definitely incorporating coffee, whether it's beans, whether it's a coffee cup, definitely that's required for them to feel like it matches their company mission statement, kind of their style. There is a downloadable client PDF that details the entire client situation. This is a full creative brief, and not all clients will send you one this extensive, but it's a great overview of what I like to see, or I have seen in the past working with clients. The client questionnaire document from a previous lesson is great to send to clients who may not know how to do this client brief or did not provide a very thorough one. I want this to be your first student project for the course. You can work alongside me throughout the section to get an idea of how I work through the steps, but I wanted you to come up with your own creative take on the Coffee Guild logo. I would love to see your work posted in the student Facebook page or the Q&A section of this group or community area. I'd love for you to share so you can get feedback from others. So now that we've gotten some information from the client, we sent them the questionnaire, they sent us back some questions, we're now able to go to the concept process, and we're going to be doing that next. There's several different ways to start this process. You could start it with pen and paper, you could start it right in Illustrator. This time I think I'm going to start it with pen and paper. I'm going to actually hop into a digital pen and paper, which is called the Procreate app. I'm going to be in there, and we are going to create and draw some general ideas based on the information the client gave us. So I am in the Procreate app. It's a great app, but you can use pen and paper. You can hop right into Adobe Illustrator. What I love about drawing and sketching is I can get ideas out a lot faster than if I'm in Illustrator using the pen tool, because the pen tool needs exact definitions of where you want to go, but this is kind of more organic. So a couple things I wanted to kind of sketch and explore, and the first one was they definitely wanted either a coffee cup or a coffee bean somewhere in their logo. So those are definitely things we need to kind of explore. I have a picture in front of me right now of a coffee bean, and we can explore the shape and kind of maybe how we can incorporate that into the logo. Another thing is we can explore the many types of coffee cups out there. There's a lot of different types of coffee cups. We can explore steam, we can explore kind of the handle, we can explore the different types that we have, whether it has steam or not. We can even do a to-go cup, but then their biggest rival is Starbucks, so maybe that's not the best way to go. Plus, if you think about it, they kind of brew their own beans, they're single origin, so maybe the whole to-go cup is more cheap They want to look a little bit more high end. So I'm thinking these type of mugs and cups will probably be what we will explore mostly. Also, we want to talk about seal logos because they loved the examples they shown were seal circular type logos or emblem logos. So we're going to kind of see how we can maybe get some text, get our established line, maybe have some kind of symbol there in the middle. So we're going to do that. And also they kind of like this little style. I'm thinking of a guild. I'm thinking maybe we can have, you know, a couple of symbols on the side there and have it either be in a circle or kind of figure out kind of that whole vibe, if that's something that could work, if they definitely want to incorporate a coffee bean and a coffee cup. So these are this is my basic sketch guide. We're going to start with a coffee bean and then work on coffee cups and just try to get ideas for logo. There's not really a huge plan outside of this, but just trying to sketch out ideas as they come. Okay, so the first item is the coffee bean. So I'm just exploring the anatomy of a coffee bean. I have several pictures. It's going to be hard to do this without really studying pictures, so just go on Google, kind of look up coffee beans. There's lots of different styles, and when you're sketching, it doesn't have to be perfect. You're just looking for shapes and opportunities because eventually this is going to be sketched out with a pen tool. So just kind of wondering if I can do kind of the bean and have this really thick kind of symbol going up. There's almost like a shadow that's being created, this little line. It's actually kind of thicker. So definitely want to accentuate that in the particular logo design. And I always look for opportunities when I'm doing shapes is, can I make a letter out of it? Can I incorporate it into a letter? You know, if I wanted to do the coffee guild and then this was a particular symbol, I always kind of like to at least explore that. What's great is you don't have to be a very good artist or someone who's really good at hand sketching, because you know, that's what Adobe Illustrator or another vector program is for, to help you kind of really perfect your curves. So that doesn't have to be perfect, it doesn't have to be accurate, just as long as it's really for ideation, creating ideas and brainstorming. It's not necessarily for accuracy. And see, and I would definitely want to do like a big thick mug. I don't want to do kind of a plastic or paper mug. So I have one right here that I'm going to sketch out. And we want to, when we're thinking about logos, we got to make them really, really simple. So we also need to make sure that we don't have complex drawings or sketches that are going to not translate well when we try to vectorize. So I don't want to put too many shadows, and they want kind of a clean, flat design. So I'm just sketching out different versions of coffee cups. And this is where we start to think about typography and finding clever ways to maybe work around it. So in this case, I'm having the O be the coffee mug, just kind of a really traditional kind of theme that popped in my head. And one idea usually lends itself to another, so I'm taking the same concept as the previous one and saying, what if the O was the coffee bean? As opposed to the mug being the O. So just kind of seeing how that would play out. Maybe even have a two-tone effect going on where you have the bottom of the typography be a darker color and the top be a lighter color, just to add some interesting color combinations there. I have to keep in mind what the client said in terms of the answers that they answered in the client questionnaire, and they wanted the seal graphic, circular graphic at least as one concept. So we should honor that, absolutely. Whatever the client says, we need to at least give them some of the ideas that they like as well, or they mentioned. So just kind of sticking with this very, very safe seal where we kind of have both the coffee cup and the coffee bean in there, and everything is in that kind of circular emblem flow. And this is when you need to be open to checking out new ideas. As I was creating the seal effect, I kind of started to wonder, oh, I just kind of saw the C and the coffee cup kind of come together. And what if we had the coffee cup, a top-down view of the coffee cup, and maybe even worked in a C in the middle? And so it kind of has the C has all the same curves as that coffee cup on the inside. And we can combine the C and maybe even work in a G somehow. Maybe we can have a really nice, concise, simple emblem here. And my desire to have both the C and the G represented kind of came up with this kind of seal logo where we have the C and the G. We're starting to do more of that 1920s guild type of style that I know they want to go for, kind of an early 20th century kind of feeling to it, and kind of incorporating the CG kind of doing an initial seal version of the logo and seeing how I can incorporate the C and the G and loop them together so that they're defined. And this is very rough, so obviously in Adobe Illustrator we can be way more fine-tuned with how we execute this. And keeping with that 1920s guild style, maybe having the X kind of symbol and then having 4 different icons all circle around that represent kind of what they serve. So we have kind of the tall cup, we have the mug, and we also have an espresso on the right, and then on the bottom, and tying that all together with the bean. And we can think about different icons to use. We can kind of stick with the mugs. We can change out kind of the order. We can even, if espresso is very important to the company, we can put an espresso maker icon, make these really detailed, neat little icons at some point. Takes me about an hour or two to kind of doodle all this out and get all kind of my ideas out of my brain onto paper, or in this case into the Procreate app. What I can do now is, if it's on pen and paper, you could take a screenshot and send it to yourself so you can open it up in Adobe Illustrator and start kind of sketching over it. And also, if you're in Procreate, you can export as a JPEG, which makes it a lot easier because I don't have to take a picture with my phone and correct the lighting. It's already has a nice white background ready to go. So that's what we're going to do next. We got several different concepts here I think could really translate into some solid logo designs. I have about 7 here. I think I'm going to isolate 3 that we're going to really focus a little bit more on, because I want to present to the client at least 2 concepts. I would love to present 3. So let's see if we can narrow it down so we don't have to spend a whole lot of time working on a concept that's not going to work in the end. Welcome back to Adobe Illustrator. We are ready to take our concepts that we sketched here and really expand on that and really kind of get some finalized logos here for the client. And there's a great chance that the logo concepts that you're going to see here that we sketched out, these really rough looking concepts, are going to look nothing like, the end logo is going to look nothing like them. We're really going to challenge kind of our iterations and challenge our concepts and really make it come to life. So speaking of which, when we're in here and you want to bring in, either you take a photo of your hand sketch with pen and paper, or you have your digital Procreate app and you export it as a JPEG. However you bring it in, all you have to do is kind of bring it in as a rough kind of JPEG or screenshot. And there's this really neat tool called Image Trace. And how you do image trace is you're going to go ahead and highlight your photo. I just brought this in as a JPEG. I actually took a screenshot of it in my Procreate app. I didn't even export as a JPEG. And you go up to Object, and you're going to go down to Image Trace, and you're going to Make. So it's kind of similar to a clipping mask where you kind of make as the kind of that language. So Image Trace, Make, and it's going to trace everything it sees and make it a vectorized item, which if you were a graphic designer a couple of years ago, before they came out with Image Trace, everybody had to hand trace with the pen tool all these custom illustrations, and they lose this kind of custom brush work that you did. And this is great for custom typography. If you really like to hand draw this amazing typography and you wanted to keep that really hand raw sketched look and feel, this is a great way to do it, to bring that in and do an image trace, because all logos, they can't remain on pen and paper. They need to be vectorized. You need to always have a vector version of your logo. So if you still want to have that custom raw sketch look, it's really hard to emulate that with the pen tool, but you can go do the object and go to image trace, and it's an amazing tool. So now that we've done image trace on this image, you'll see that I can't have access to all the little anchor points to be able to manipulate this a little bit further. So I just need to do one more step, and that's go to Object, and you want to expand. So this is going to expand it, and you're going to do Object and Fill, which is default, and then click OK. And here we are. There's our little vectorized version. We can ungroup it, and now we have access to, you might have to right click and ungroup a few times. And there we go. We have all of our anchor points here that we can manipulate. We can do with the pen tool, we can manipulate, or we can do it the curvature tool to customize it. So we're not going to do this. This was a quick little sketch. Doesn't look amazing, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that. But just wanted to show you the amazing image trace feature so that you can be able to bring in that kind of custom look when you need to. So here we are with the first sketch. Let's try to kind of come up with our own version. We're not going to keep that because that's so rough. You know, I really am not a custom illustrator. Definitely much better with vector and Illustrator tools. So let's go ahead and get started. So I'm kind of seeing this idea, and it's going to evolve a little bit with a coffee cup. So let's go ahead and start creating a little coffee cup outline. This is a top-down view of a coffee cup, so we may need to have a little bit of shadow so it doesn't look like just a circle, kind of add a little bit of detail to it. So I'm just getting the ellipse tool, and I'm just going to draw a simple circle. And let's go ahead and make this a stroke if we can, and make it a little bit thicker. And so what I want to do is I want to have that top-down look. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste, make this a little bit smaller, and see if I can't get the rim of the coffee cup. I want a nice thick coffee cup rim, just like that. And we're not going to be exploring color yet, so everything's going to be kind of black and white, and I like to make it a little bit of a darker gray to kind of emulate color a little bit better. And so now we need to do our little handle that comes out the side. So let's do that. We can go ahead and we could do the rectangle tool. That might be the easiest way to do it. Little handle coming out here. And then we can also just customize these. If you double click them, you can edit just one angle. And that just gives it a nice round appearance. And we can bring this in and then get that curvature tool and match the curve. Okay, so now we need to add kind of a sense of shadow. Let me just make sure my curve is matched. Okay, so now we need to add a sense of shadow, because right now it just looks like circles with something coming out the left. We really want to add some dimension to this, and we could do that with a simple shade of black. So we're just going to draw a square here. Just have the pen tool, and I'm just kind of creating a shape. And I'm going to take that curvature tool. I'm going to use the curvature tool a lot, kind of match that curve of the glass, so you can kind of see how it looks like a shadow kind of being cast. And it doesn't have to be quite as long. We can make that a tighter shadow if we need to, and that looks great. So there's kind of our rough coffee mug shape. We can go ahead and put our C in there. I want to find a nice C, a typeface that's a geometric style typeface. So geometric style typefaces or really adapt well to circles. You can kind of tell in the Google logo how the G fits really good in a circle because it's a geometric typeface like a Futura. So let me find a geometric typeface that's also thick. We can customize the type. We can hand draw it with a pen tool, but I like to start out with a typeface because it just makes it a lot easier to get the natural shape of the letter. So I'm just going to go over here to my go ahead and find a good font that would work really well that's geometric. Azo Sans happens to kind of have a little bit of a geometric shape to it. You can kind of see how it curves along a circle a little bit better than other types may not. So let me just show you an example. Let's do one that I know is not a geometric shape. So Helvetica is not geometric. As you can see, it doesn't fit in the circle quite as well. It's got kind of some different gaps there. So we're going to use Azo Sans Black, and we're going to have to use the pen tool to adjust the G a little bit. So we're going to right click. We need to create outline so we can go ahead and edit our anchor points. And let's go ahead and take the pen tool and go ahead and match the gray. So now what I want to do is I want to hug this G in there, and actually I think we have a C, and I think my goal is, instead of having the Coffee Guild just have the C, I really want to work in the C and the G, because I feel like leaving out the G, it just feels empty with just the C. So I'd love to kind of incorporate a G maybe inside, just kind of thinking about this. So let's go ahead and copy and paste. We can see what would happen if we put the G inside. I put the C outside. Since it's Coffee Guild, coffee is going to be the first letter. So we're definitely going to have to customize this a little bit to make it work. So you can see this is not quite fitting exactly how I'd like. I'd like it a lot thinner of a stroke. So what you could do is there's a few things you could do. You could do object, path, you could do an offset path, and you could do a negative offset path, so it makes it a little bit skinnier. So let's try that, maybe not quite as skinny. And they can always ungroup it and move the other original to the side. And then now you have kind of your skinnier version already. You can go in and you can edit this to make sure it goes around the circle a little bit more precisely by using the direct selection tool or the curvature tool to kind of move it and shift it so that it matches kind of the angle. So all we're doing is we're just kind of matching the angle of the circle of the cup, of the rim of the cup. We're just using the direct selection tool and making some movements. Remember, you can always, if you're doing curves, don't ignore the curvature tool. It could be very helpful, kind of fine-tuning curves, especially if you want them to be exact. So there's kind of our C. We could probably make sure this width right here is matched. If you want to be really mathematically precise, we could probably create our own C. And you could do that by doing circles. So we can do a circle, and then another circle, make it a different color, and kind of create our C that way. And just go to my align panel. I'm doing all the center aligns so that I know this is perfectly center aligned. We could take the shape builder tool, we could punch this out. We can also draw a shape halfway down. Okay, and now we're selecting all three of those. Getting our shape builder tool, we're going to punch all this out. So just punching all that out. And then we're left with the perfect C. And let's say I don't like the thickness of that. That's where the path, the offset path tool really works well. If we want to do a positive 0.02, we can thicken it up a little bit. No problem, just like that. So that could be the way we do it. It's a little bit more mathematical because it's using a circle. Or you can do the method I have and then kind of shorten the C a little bit by using the shape builder tool and just punching all that out. So either way works. You know, this is a little bit thicker, but we can also make this thicker by using the offset path tool. So now let's try to work in our G. So the G is where we're gonna really need some help here, kind of doing what we did prior. So we're gonna see if we can tuck that in the center here, just trying out this concept, seeing if that works at all. We can zoom in and you can see it doesn't match perfectly into the circle, but it's pretty darn close. And I like to add a little bit of distance between the characters because when you have a logo and you zoom out, you want to make sure there's enough gap there to really make out the spacing, because I see a lot of mistakes in logo design and they'll have like really thin lines between elements, and when you zoom out it really loses the spacing as you zoom out. So I like to have nice thick lines. I also like to have nice thick spacing between elements to make it really clear when the logo is seen small. So just like a little logo design tip there. So I'm going to create outlines on this because I want to be able to match the curves a little bit on this. So I'm going to take the curvature tool and I'm just kind of matching all of this and kind of bringing that down a little bit so it has more of a circular bend to its curves. And this is where we can soften the type a little bit. So if we want to have rounded corners, you just get the direct selection tool. You're going to go ahead and drag this down. It's going to change all of them at one time. Just going to do a subtle curve to soften the type so it doesn't look so sharp. And we could do the same thing to the C. And we can soften those curves there. Let's go ahead and zoom out and kind of see how this concept is going. Here's our coffee cup coming to life. I like the idea of the C and the G put together. What I want to do is have some more contrast between the C and the G so they don't run together as one symbol. They're read as separate letters. So we could just we're not doing color as much at this point in the stage. I like to kind of keep it black and white. We're working on the concept first, not necessarily the color. And then we're just going to lighten that up a little bit, just kind of give a little bit more contrast. And another thing, when you kind of zoom out, you kind of look at your logo and going, is this going to work? I'm zooming out and I'm going, you know, there's a lot of lines and there's a lot of strokes happening. Let's find ways to simplify this logo mark even further to make it more simple shapes. So one thing we can do is make this a solid kind of circle instead of two lines. Instead of an outline or a stroke, we can make this a solid mug kind of rim. So we could do that easily. We have kind of our two shapes here. We could just make these both a fill. And let me make this a different color so you can kind of see what's going on. So all I did is made those two circles fills, and I'm just going to take the shape builder tool and just hold down Option and punch that out. And voila, we already have a filled in shape. We want to make this a fill, so we're going to flip that to fill, and then we're going to make this a little bit of a lighter color. Perhaps we could make this that color. Of course, that's a shadow, so we may need to reverse that out and make this a lighter of a gray, and still make that a shadow. And maybe not make it cast as much, as we're kind of playing around how big is the handle actually going to be. Another thing we can do is to make it more obvious that it's a handle is maybe rotate it a little bit, give it a little bit of an angle, and have it be a little bit down on the coffee cup so it looks kind of like a little angle, like it's hanging out on a coffee table. I'm just going to bring that to the back. Great. So there's our little coffee. Let me make it a little bit thicker. Just doing little small adjustments to everything. So I think that looks really good. It puts more emphasis on the lettering and a little less emphasis on the coffee cup, which I think we really need if we're going to do an abbreviation type logo. It's kind of nice to have more accentuation on the type. So one thing to really make sure people see this as a coffee cup and not just a circle with the strange shape coming out of the end is adding a little bit more dimension. So what I thought we would do is add a little bit of shadow that's cast on the rim onto the cup of coffee. Because eventually I'm just trying to kind of think about color a little bit. I thought about making the center a nice coffee medium brown color. So it'd be nice to have a little bit of a shadow that goes around the rim that's cast so you can see the difference of where the rim is and where the inside coffee is. Just a little shadowing. So I'm going to just go ahead and get an ellipse tool. Just going to draw a circle. I'm going to make it a stroke, and let's make it a different color so we can see what we're doing. Okay, we can add a little bit of coloring here. Let's add a color we're already using. So let's add, just to reduce the overall color count, let's go ahead and use the eyedropper tool and take that color of shade. And I think that's the same shading that's cast here on the handle. Let's make it a little bit thicker. We're just adding a little shadow for the rim that's cast down into the glass. So we could do that, and if we're not happy with kind of how it looks kind of perfectly even, we kind of have an angle or kind of have a top-down view, but maybe the angle is a little bit over to one side. It's not a totally top-down angle. We can kind of change that a little bit by using the width tool. So we're going to grab the width tool. We're just going to make one side a little bit thicker than the other, which will kind of give it a little bit more dimension. It's not going to be perfectly even. So I'm going to go ahead and click and drag, and see how it just makes it a little bit thicker on one side. Okay, so you see it's a very kind of small change I made, but it gives it a little bit more dimension. It looks like the angle is just 1 or 2 degrees over from top down, kind of gives it a more natural appearance. And plus it gives us a chance to have another little border here to differentiate from the coffee that's going to be inside the cup. And let's say at any time I'm like, I really want to make that mug thicker. Some people would add a stroke of the same color and outline the stroke, or you could just go up to path, offset path, and add a little bit more to it, just like that. And I just automatically thickened it without having to mess around with a lot of stuff. Right, so now I'm just going to mess with spacing a little bit and just kind of make sure there's enough spacing between elements. And we can even check on our grid. We're going to be using grids a lot in the rest of the class, and making sure there's the same distance between the C and the G and then the C and the outside of the cup, just to have consistency with spacing and to kind of have a uniform look with that. And we could do that on the grid. We can also do that by eye, by just kind of drawing a rectangle here and just kind of seeing the spacing here and making adjustments. This is not a scientific way of doing it, but it kind of helps with nudging it over just a little bit to make sure that that spacing is matched. And so we can always pop in the grid at any time to do that, but we're going to do that after we're kind of done with concept time, because we don't need to be perfect right now. The client hasn't even approved some of these yet, so we're just kind of getting the rough idea together so we can send it in for approval. So the way you use contrast in a logo is to accentuate certain items over others. And the shadow is really, now that I'm kind of looking at this and I'm zooming out, I'm seeing those shadows is really drawing way too much attention. So I'm just going to simply take everything that's that shade and I'm just going to lighten it just a little bit, just to have a little less contrast between the shadow and the mug. So you have a little bit more contrast or a little bit more focus on the C and the G. So just continuing to find ways to improve the logo in terms of making it as simple as possible, and also making sure colors aren't too harsh, and then that they do have high contrast in areas where you want a lot of attention and focus, which would be the C and the G. So now that we have the C and the G, people need to know what that stands for. So let's go ahead and write our typography out, our coffee guild. I'd like to go back to our concept and have it written just like that around the edge. So we can go ahead and do that. So we're going to use the type on path tool. We're just going to grab our ellipse tool, flip that to a stroke so I can kind of see where the type is going to go. And the type on path tool, if you haven't used it yet, it's a pretty awesome tool. So I'm going to go to type on path. So I'm just going to go down here to my type and then go down to type on path. And I'm going to click right here at the beginning. And I'm just going to go ahead and type in my letters here. I just went and clicked right on the line. So Coffee Guild, and there is a the, so we don't want to miss out on the Coffee Guild. And now we need to kind of get an idea on size. I'm not going to mess with the font, the type choice yet, but I'm going to mess with size. So I have a little keyboard shortcut that really helps kind of make it, instead of having to go up here all the time and change the lettering, all you have to do is do Command Shift, and you're going to do your brackets on the bottom left. I'll go ahead and show you a picture of that. You're going to do your left bracket to make it lower and your right to make it bigger. So I'm going to be doing that a lot throughout the class. And now I want to add some spacing, and I also perhaps want to make it all capital letters, because I think with lowercase letters it's not quite as strong. And plus with lowercase letters I hate putting wide spacing. I'm going to show you lowercase letters should never have a lot of wide spacing between them because they just feel a little bit, I guess, immature in its look, a little less professional, and it doesn't seem as cohesive. So you'll always hear me say don't use a lot of spacing with lowercase typography, but uppercase it's okay because uppercase are all in the same kind of X height, or they're all the same cap height, I guess I should say, and so they have a lot better, they seem a little bit more together. So I'm just going to go in my character panel and I'm going to make this all caps. So now I have all this all caps and get an idea and size for that. I can also go ahead and copy and paste this. We need to have our established date somewhere. I think that would be a good counter to have a lot of heavy text up here. We need to have some kind of counter to that so it doesn't seem so top heavy. So putting it along the bottom makes a lot of sense. So we're going to do established. It's 2016. And we don't want to just rotate this and have it be upside down. We want to have it right side up. We always want to do that. So we're just going to go down. This is a little bit tricky, but you can look for that little icon right there. And you're going to click. You're going to click and hold, and it's going to, sometimes it gets a little funny. It's going to go ahead and reverse it on the inside instead of being on the outside. So that gives us a chance to have it be read right side up. So now we're going to make that a lot smaller, and we're not going to have as much wide spacing between that. It doesn't need to stretch as far. So we're just going to do maybe a 50 spacing. And there we go. So what I might do is I might do lowercase for this. So I'm going to go ahead and go to character and just take the all caps off. And what's great about when you do font pairing and you put together different font and typefaces, it's always good to have contrast. So right now I'm going to have this really all caps typography, and then down here could be lowercase, just kind of a way to mix it up a little bit so everything is easily separated and read as separate items. Now the all-important typeface choice. So what typeface or font should we use for this? And so we got to really think about the style of the logo. So this is really kind of a flat style. It's using, there's no drop shadows, there's no gradients. It's a very simple flat design. So we want to stick with maybe kind of a thicker, chunkier typeface to pair well with this kind of thicker kind of elements that we have. So let's think about that as we make our type choice. So this is Helvetica, and let's go ahead and make this a similar gray so we can kind of see it in that final shade. And we could just cycle through several of these to get an idea. I already have kind of one picked out, but I'm going to go over some that could work really well. So we use Azo Sans Black for the G, so it's great to have consistency. Of course, we modified this significantly, so we don't necessarily have to use that same typeface since we modified it. But this works really well. It's got like a nice thick chunky type, and it's really readable when you zoom out. That's why I really like thicker type choices, especially for seals when the type is not as large as it is when it's the main focus point of the logo. So it's nice to have that nice chunky font. So that's a great choice. There's ones that have a little bit more character to them that we can try. This is a slab serif, so it's got kind of the slabs kind of coming off of the type. And so with slab serifs, this can work really well to add a little bit more character to it. And of course, scripts in all caps, it's going to be really hard for that to be read, so that's not going to be a really good choice. When you zoom out, you lose it. You lose kind of that thinner type choice. This could be kind of elegant. It's a little bit thicker. You can always use a bolder weight if you're going to use kind of a serif typeface, but it makes it a little bit more professional and high end. It kind of, anytime you use a serif, it just looks more high end. So if that's kind of the look you want to go for, you know, that could, or you got to kind of think about your logo target audience. This is where we think about the client, what's going to resonate. And this is going to be millennials who are going to come and work and use this as a working space. You know, I really want to use a more contemporary sans serif typeface. So that's what I'm kind of thinking about when I'm picking the typeface out. And there is one I picked out ahead of time. There it is. Urban Black. That's kind of one when I was doing this concept. I did all of these concepts and fleshed them out before I filmed the class to get an idea of kind of the direction I wanted to go in. And this is kind of the typeface I settled on. I spent about a half hour doing exactly what I was doing before, kind of testing out different ones. And this seemed to work really well. It kind of matches a little bit of that geometric kind of look down there in the bottom, and it's got a similar weight. So everything seems consistent, like it kind of goes together. And this is where we can kind of reduce the type size. Of course, you do that shortcut, which is Command Shift, and do your left bracket, and kind of see what spacing looks like here. And this, of course, this bottom one can change. We can match it, make it smaller, or we can have a different typeface altogether. That's okay if you have more than one typeface. Just try not to have more than 3 or 4 in a logo. That definitely is not a good idea. So we can use the grids here to kind of make sure we have some things lined up. But once again, we're in the concept mode. Once we get a concept approved from the client, we can be a little bit more exact with how it is. So we can use some other methods to find out if everything is aligned. So I'm just making sure the T and the D are aligned all the way across. And I'm just using simple boxes and eyeballing it for now. We'll get very exact because it takes a lot of time to get it perfect on the grid. So once this concept is approved, we can go a step further and really make sure everything is pixel perfect. And, you know, we'll do that at a later time. So now that I'm kind of happy with this, what I'm going to do, I'm going to be outlining the type because I want to customize the typeface a little bit, maybe round the edges just like we did on the inside to kind of match it so we don't have those sharp right edges and points on the typography. So anytime I do that, anytime I outline type, I always copy and paste it and move it outside of the artboard. So I always have access to the live editable type because, as you know, once you right click and create outlines, I no longer can go back and change the type. So I'm going to zoom in and do what I've done a lot of already, and I'm going to just kind of do my direct selection tool. I'm going to see if I can't round out this typeface just a little bit. I don't want to do anything too dramatic because if I make it too curvy, it'll look a little bit more childlike. So I want some curves, I want some softness, but I don't want to overdo it. So I'm going to do something maybe in between, maybe right about there, kind of see how that looks when I expand that out. And making alone for now. So there's kind of our basic idea. And the only thing missing now is adding a little bit of color. So there's a couple things you could do with your clients, and sometimes I do this with my clients, is if you wanted to do it by the book, you would send them some ideas in black and white first so that they don't get color in their head and they don't get their cart in front of the horse and try to focus too much on, oh, the colors are wrong, when they really should be focusing on the core concept first. So a lot of times I'll send a logo in black and white. I'll send the first 3 concepts. We're going to do the other 2 here in a minute. And I'll send 3 concepts to the client in black and white so that color is not a problem. I make sure I mention that in my email. There's no color, and there's a reason, because we don't want to focus so much on color at this point. We really want to focus on is the concept good, is the shapes good, is the type good. There's so much that they need to focus on that when you add color in it, it gives them, they're overwhelmed. So I'm going to actually submit this, and I'm going to make sure my shades are correct. Eventually these shades will be color, but I can use varying shades of gray to communicate, different shades of color. So this is what I would send to the client right here. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Once we finish the other 2 concepts, I'm going to talk about how I package and send these to the client and how I present them as well. So let's see if we can't take this concept now and create another concept out of it. We have a few others that we're going to do, but I always like to take this finished logo and kind of rearrange it, think about different positions, define different iterations. Maybe there's a different layout or arrangement that will work better than what we came up with. So this is where we just kind of play around and experiment. So I'm just going to copy and paste this and try out. I know originally we just had a C there, and we can do the offset path tool and see if we can't make that a lot thicker and just have the C in there. Maybe the G is a little too much. You know, that's an option. What we could do is we can take this tool and maybe cut it right where the C ends. We're just going to do the shape builder tool. Go ahead and select everything. I love the shape builder tool. It's so easy to cut things out. And so that could be an option where it's kind of cut in half. You could kind of see the C, you know, that could be an option. And this could be arranged a little bit differently. So maybe we could tuck this established date somewhere else. And this is why we keep live text over here, so that we can go ahead and copy it and have it available to use when we rearrange it. And we can have the Coffee Guild, or we could do kind of a stacked typography arrangement instead of a circular. And what's great about this is it makes it really flexible, because I can have a vertical logo, I can have a horizontal logo with this. I like to make letters that aren't as important a little bit smaller, to have a little bit of type hierarchy. So now that the is not as accentuated because it's not as important of a word, but the Coffee Guild is. We could probably reduce the spacing here because we don't need as much spacing now that we're not trying to stretch it across the circle. So now I'm just trying to find a balance with this to see if this could even be a concept. And I would probably have to put use color to help this be seen as a coffee mug now that it's cut in half. But the idea that it makes a C is kind of interesting. We could make a G out of this if we wanted to. It'd be a little bit hard to fit the G in there, but we can get some other type of ideas. We can play with the typeface here again. We can go back to ones, maybe the sans serif to add a little bit of character, or we can go back to kind of that same. I like this. It's kind of got a 1930s kind of look, which is kind of when guilds were really popular, like professional guilds. So that's kind of interesting. I still think this needs a coffee cup or something in the center there to kind of show that it's a mug, but I don't know, just not feeling this concept as much, but we'll just tuck it to the side. You never know what might come of it later. So one more thing I want to do here. Let's try one more thing. I like keeping the seal, so let's keep that. But I thought instead of maybe having the C and the G, that we have the coffee mug. I think that looks great. But maybe also seeing if we can't make this a little bit more of a simple seal by just using the coffee mug. So just kind of messing around with this a little bit. This is kind of the second iteration I came up with. And I thought this was neat because it put a lot of emphasis on the cup, and we didn't have to do, this is a non-abbreviation logo, so there's no abbreviation, so it's kind of nice to offer the client a second iteration of a similar concept, and this would be it. It would be a focus on the coffee cup, and I can see if when this is applied to color, this would be a nice rich brown color, the center of the coffee, so it makes it even more obvious that it's a coffee cup or coffee mug. So you also noticed I added a little bit of a cast shadow down here. And then all this is just a round circle, and I just went up and kind of did a little bit of a feather to it, just to kind of give it a little bit of that feather. And the final logo, we can always do a harsher drop shadow to make it keep with the flat design, because as you know, flat design doesn't use any blurred shapes or drop shadows. So we can always just do a solid circle that's a little bit of a darker color and put it behind it to give it a sense of depth and drop shadow. Of course, it's only going to cast shadow from that one direction. And it's going to cast a shadow according to that little shape there. And so now we may need to kind of adjust our shape, kind of match that style. I'm just taking off snap to pixel off, so I have complete control over my pen tool here to make some adjustments. Zooming out, there's kind of the harsher drop shadow, or one that doesn't blur, so it's technically could be called a flat design. And so there's one option that could work, has a much stronger focus. See how you have the big black circle and you have the high contrast typography. It brings a lot more emphasis on the name, which this could look good. It's also more simple of a logo, so that could work. The clients may not like the idea of the C and the G, and so offering them this gives them the same idea with the seal, but in a different fashion that they may like. So there's two options now that we can present. So let's work on the other two. We have two more. I'm going to kind of show you some of the concepts that I came up with when I was working on this before filming the class, of some similar iterations to this original concept we just worked on. Just kind of showing you the wide variety of stuff that you can kind of come up with by just having that one idea, that one concept. All this was that one concept, and I just kept going with it and kept going, and it kept evolving. So you can see all the different iterations we came up with. So let's next work on kind of the cross kind of seal look as well, because I know they wanted kind of the seal emblem look. So we're going to continue to offer what the client requests, and we're going to do that next. Let's knock out our second concept we sketched out here. I'm going to create a new artboard. I'm going to try to keep everything in the same file because it just makes life a lot easier. I'm going to go to edit artboards and just going to draw a new artboard, or I can just copy the same size if I want to. But just looking for a space to work on, and we will export this to the client. We'll have a concept on each page presented, and we'll get to that in a little bit. So here we are. That's our very rough sketch, but it gives us an idea of where to start. So we're going to do kind of this classic idea. This is done a lot. I think it's a very common theme you've seen in logo design in the last 10 years. So I think it's a very approachable concept, a concept the client will understand, and it's kind of a safe, to me, a safe concept. And that's what I'll get into this a little bit, how when I send 3 concepts to the client, I like to have 3 different concept types. One that's very basic and easy to accept, very basic logo. It's not going to be pushing any boundaries. And then you have kind of an intermediate logo that's going to push a little boundaries. It's going to be a little bit more different. And then I have a third option, which will be the most challenging, different type of logo. It's definitely going to stretch the boundaries a little bit and be a little bit more different. And so I like to kind of send them some safe ideas and some challenging ideas, because you want them to challenge and stretch themselves to try something a little bit new and different, but you don't want to give them just new and different, because they may want to have that safe option in their back pocket. Every client wants to have that safe option, which may feel boring. The concept may feel predictable or boring, but it's something that they're more likely to choose. And as a logo designer, it's about getting that project done and making clients happy. So there's a little bit of creative kind of things you have to do to kind of get that client to feel like you're giving them what they want, but also you're stretching your design skills and showing them your creativity as well. So with this one's pretty simple. We're just going to go ahead and create our X first. So we're going to get our pen tool. We're just going to draw a simple line, nothing too extravagant. We're going to go ahead and make that a stroke. And one thing we could do to make this more exact is we can go up to here to view, and we could do snap to point. So this is going to snap to particular points on the artboard. It's a great way to make perfect straight lines. You click, you're going to go down, it's going to kind of snap a little bit for you. It's going to make a perfect kind of line. And we're going to make this a stroke and go ahead and adopt a gray color here. And we're just going to round, we're just in our stroke panel, just going to like to round the cap and round the corner and increase the size. Great, so now I'm going to make a perfect plus. So I'm going to just hold down Option and drag. I'm going to go up to my transform, and I'm going to rotate this guy 90 degrees. And now we have kind of a plus symbol. And we're going to make sure all that's evenly aligned by going up to my align panel or align options. I'm just going to click on all the center ones, all the ones that say center, all the way across. So I think there's just 4 options. So now it's centered all the way around. So now all we have to do is rotate it by 45 degrees. Just going to transform, rotate. Let's go ahead and do a preview, make sure 45 degrees is correct. And now we have a perfect cross. It's going to be the same width on all 4 sides. So now we have our base here. So now we need to do our 4 icons. So this is where it gets really exciting because we get to really kind of work with iconography and take some reference photos and see what we can do here. There was another concept here that I had kind of a espresso machine. I think I kind of want to work on that one a little bit, but each one of them has a coffee bean. So let's do the coffee bean first. Well, coffee bean will be easy. Just going to do the ellipse tool. You can always use a reference photo to kind of get an idea of shape and size like we did earlier. And then we can go ahead and draw our little shape here. It's kind of like a curved shape that goes all the way across. And to kind of make this look a little bit less computerized, we can use the width tool and kind of make that a little bit wider, make that a little bit smaller. Just like that. Just make it a little bit more of a natural kind of bend instead of just all the same thickness. So I also want to have natural bends and curves to the bean because no bean is a perfect oval, kind of has a little bit of edges to it. So just making it look a little bit less inorganic, we want to make it look organic. So one thing we could do is we can go up and do some warp options. We can go to warp, or we can go to distort and transform, and we can do a little bit of these. Let's see what a roughen will look like. We're going to preview it, and we're going to do a smooth point, and we're going to do it pretty much as low as it goes. We just want little small kind of bends in there. So you notice how it kind of added kind of some interesting shapes, makes it look more like an organic bean. And I wonder what happened if we added like that, just the way it is. Just kind of giving it more of an organic shape. Of course, we can make it smaller, make it match, and change our width accordingly. And there's kind of our bean. Of course, we can always go in and use the curvature tool to make sure that is how we like it. So now it's time to sketch our little espresso cup, and I love to use reference photos just to kind of get an idea for shape and kind of the best way I can really take this high gloss photo and simplify it to a very, very simple basic icon. So I'm going to go ahead and take this photo, I'm going to go ahead and save it and bring that into, this is just from Google, and just want to go ahead and bring that in. We never want to copy a photo completely. We want to have some unique qualities to it. Of course, we're going to simplify it so much that we're not going to be infringing on any copyrights for the photo because we're going to be doing such a simplified sketch of this. So I'm just bringing this in as our reference photo. I'm going to bring this down, and we're just going to start to kind of get an idea for the shape of this shot glass. I'm going to we're going to do some pen tool practice here. We're going to go ahead and see how we can simplify this a little bit. So I love using the curvature tool, so instead of doing the pen tool and tracing the shape, I think the curvature tool is more technically accurate with curves. So I'm just going to do a straight shape and complete the shape. And I'm going to get my curvature tool and go ahead and make my curves that way. I just feel like it's a little bit more realistic of a shape. So now I'm going to do everything in strokes so I can kind of see how everything's coming along. And we can go ahead and do a circle here for the top. Gonna make sure that matches. Okay, and then now we can start to kind of simplify this a little bit. So we definitely want to show kind of this shadow here where you have the thickness of the glass. And once again, you can go ahead and click over here and just make a solid shape here, and we can use the curvature tool to make that big curve downward. So I'm just going to select the center, drag it down, and it's going to match it perfectly. So I love the curvature tool. So I'm going to make sure that's a stroke. So now we have that part. We need to kind of have, you notice how there's two different colors here. You kind of have the froth, and then you kind of have the deeper espresso. So I want to kind of show that as well in our picture. So I'm going to see if I can draw, got to remember to use that curvature tool. I keep wanting to do it the way I've always done it, but since really discovering that curvature tool, and I've been using it a whole lot more. So now I can use that to bring it down, and we'll create another layer that'll kind of show the deeper espresso portion of the coffee. So I'm just kind of tracing this around and getting that curvature tool and bringing it down, kind of show where it starts and begins. And I probably need to bring these points up here. It's only this part's going to be darker. Great, and you also see, let me reduce, sometimes I like to reduce the transparency of a photo so I can kind of really see what I'm doing a little bit better. And so you'll notice how there's these kind of reflection lines here. I want to be able to emulate that in a really simple way. So I'm just going to do kind of a simple line, white bar that goes all the way across. Very, very simple. That's going to just be a white bar. Great, so we have our basic outlines. We no longer need the reference photo. So here's kind of our basic shape. So we can thicken all these lines up a little bit. Just like that. We want to have nice thick lines when we do any kind of iconography. Anything for a logo design, nice thick. You don't want to be too thin. And then you zoom out. I see students do this all the time. They'll have this really thin design and you move out and you can barely make it out. But with nice thick lines, you'll see that it'll really translate really well. So here's where we can add shades and color, or not color, but shades of gray. So this will probably remain white down here. And this is our dark espresso, so let's make that kind of a dark color. This will be kind of a medium shade, so let's make it a little bit lighter. Kind of our froth, if you will. And let's go ahead and move some of these strokes on the top. So you're bringing some of those strokes on top. Okay, so now we have our reflection that we want to have. So we're going to reverse that, make that a fill, and make that white. And so there's our little reflection, and what we could do, we can make it maybe a little bit thicker. You can never go wrong by making it thicker because it'll show up better at a distance. And what we're going to do, because right now when we put this on a background, any color, you'll notice that you have the white color there. And we want to have that punched out. We don't ever want to have that be shown on the logo on a transparent color. So we can just select everything, and we can get our shape builder tool, and we could just punch all of that out so it's punched out. So what we could do now is we can thicken the stroke even further. We can also do some round caps and some round joins to soften the edges. And we could probably even afford, if we zoom out, this is probably the size it's going to be. Let's go ahead and start to bring it in so we can know the thickness of the lines that we need to have. Go ahead and bring it in. Maybe have a little bit of a different weight there. So there's our little glass, our little espresso glass. I did another little version over here that I think looks a little bit more simplified. Kind of like the rounded corners a little bit. But I do kind of enjoy how we have the two-tone look there. So what I might do is just kind of bring that in here to be a part of this logo.